In this video, I'll be inspecting the 4-year-old timing and balance shaft belts on my Porsche 944, comparing their condition to that of some new belts, and providing an overview of the belt options on the market today. The 944 timing belt replacement interval often comes up as a conversation topic for current and prospective owners of these cars, and perhaps rightly so given Porsche's recommended replacement interval of every 45,000 miles, which is roughly half the mileage recommended on most other modern vehicles. The interference aspect of the engine certainly doesn't help matters, as an aging belt condition adds to the growing concern of a potential failure, leading to more costly engine repairs. And as a result, there's a good population of the enthusiast community that follows a replacement interval of every 2 years or 30,000 miles, which is manageable if you're doing your own work, but Porsche specialist rates can be quite costly. Most of the 944s that are roadworthy today see nothing close to 15,000 miles of use each year, so in those cases, do the belts really need to be replaced every 2 years? And the answer is it depends. It depends on how the car has been maintained, how the belts were tensioned, and if other related components like the rollers and the water pump have been replaced as recommended, and if the belt has been inspected at key intervals. The problem is that in many cases, these cars haven't been maintained at that level, and all those items can contribute to a premature belt failure. So with that said, let's take a quick look at how a timing belt can be inspected. Whether you're a current owner or in the market to buy a 944, it's always a good idea to confirm the details around the last timing belt replacement, both the date and the mileage, and if there's an unknown history, the car probably shouldn't be driven extensively until the belts are cared for. The good news is you can get a quick and dirty assessment of the belt's condition in 10 minutes or less by removing the upper front belt cover from the engine. The cover is secured by 7 10mm bolts around the edge of the front cover, and all you need to do is work your way around with a ratchet to remove the bolts. The car won't need to be lifted to get this done, but there are a couple bolts just below the water pump that have limited direct line of sight for removal. With the bolts removed, the plastic cover can be tilted and pulled away for a view of the belts. You should now be able to determine the general physical condition of the timing belt, and some red flags here would include visible cracks in the rubber, missing belt teeth, fraying of the belt material, excessive dryness or hardening of the rubber, and in some non-running examples, you may even find that the timing belt has already broken. In any of these situations, the safest bet is to dig in a little deeper for some needed maintenance. At this point, you won't be able to take a tension reading on the belt because of other components in the way, but it's easy enough to get a look at the belt and consider some next steps. As for this 944, I have the timing and balance shaft belts off the car while I'm replacing all the upper and lower balance shaft housing seals, so we'll be able to take a good look at them. These belts were replaced in 2018, so they're right at 4 years old, and while I've only put 3,508 miles on them during that time, they have been off and back on the car 4 or 5 times for various maintenance. They've been released and retensioned, so they've been handled a little bit, and the car has been parked mostly in the garage, but sometimes spent out in the driveway, certainly not in a climate-controlled environment at all, and it can get pretty humid here in North Carolina, which can affect the condition of the rubber. So let's take a look and see how they compare to a set of new belts. Here's a closer look at the 4-year-old timing belt, and its overall condition is actually quite good. There really aren't any significant signs of wear outside the fact that it's taken on a slightly glossier appearance from running over the various gears and pulleys in the system. There's no fraying or cracking in the rubber material. All the teeth are intact and undamaged, and the material is still quite flexible. As you can see here, this is a ContiTech series belt manufactured by Continental, a popular and well-known belt option. When comparing the used belt to a new belt by the same manufacturer, again, there aren't any major differences to its condition aside from the new belt having more of a matte finish to its surfaces. All of the measurements and specifications seem to align across the two belts, and while there may be some light stretching and stresses on the belt that are invisible to the eye, I personally wouldn't have any major reservations about running this belt for another year if I had to, but that's mainly because I've already performed all the related maintenance that could impact the longevity of the belt. Upon inspecting the old balance shaft belt, I found it to be in similar condition to that of the timing belt, with no cracking or dryness observed, no errant threads in the belt material, and all the rubber teeth firmly attached. The belt does show a little bit of wear on the top of the rubber teeth along the inside edge. That's because shortly after I purchased the car, the bolt for the idler roller backed out while I was driving, and it made brief physical contact with the balance shaft belt before being launched up and wedged in between the two sections of the belt cover. Aside from that, though, there is no deterioration of the belt's overall condition due to aging that I can see, which is verified when comparing it to a new balance shaft belt. Since the belts are already off the car for the balance shaft housing reseal, I decided to go ahead and replace both of the belts, and I opted for a set of Gates belts this time around, another popular brand. So let's take a look at how the ContiTech belt compares to the Gates belt. The three primary belt manufacturers we find on the market today are Gates, Continental, and Dayco, and the 944 options are fairly similar across the board. Here we can see a Gates and a ContiTech belt side by side, and there aren't any obvious manufacturing differences from a quality perspective. They're both equivalent in size and shape, they're equally pliable, and the tooth profile appears identical. The only real difference I can see is that the Gates belt has more of a textured surface, where the ContiTech is a little smoother. As for production, the Gates belt was manufactured in the United States and the ContiTech in Germany, and the pricing for the Gates belt comes in just a few dollars lower than the ContiTech at $15 versus $18. The third standard option available for the 944 would be a Dayco belt, and one differentiation point we can see here is they feature a patented tooth profile where the center of the tooth is slightly indented. Dayco claims this makes their belts more durable, but really all three belts are similar in reliability and quality of design. In fact, all three of these belt manufacturers supply various car companies with timing belts for installation at the factory, and if you purchase an OEM Porsche belt from the dealer, you may actually see that the OEM logo is printed right alongside the manufacturer's logo. As far as performance products go, Gates also offers some racing series belts, which are easily identified by their bright blue color and $130 price point. The racing belts feature a double tooth strength with increased durability and heat resistance to withstand the additional stresses put on racing engines. There are also people who've installed these belts for everyday street use on their 944s and have reported no issues. But given their relative higher cost and the frequency of the belt replacement interval on the 944, most people just opt for a conventional timing belt and will do just fine. Well, that concludes the overview of the Porsche 944 timing belt options. I'm going to go ahead and get these Gates belts installed, put some miles on them, and see how they hold up.